inside my head, becoming blurred by so much said. I'm in too deep waters I tread, can't catch my breath. A shadow chasing me, a game of hide and seek. Found they'll have a
All right, welcome everyone to another edition of, well, actually, no, today we are not doing a deconversion story. We're
converting someone to religion.
No. I'm sort of fanboying a little bit here today because I discovered, I didn't discover him. Dan's been around since before I even knew.
All right, Columbus.
However, I stumbled upon one of his videos on TikTok one day, and how he talks about correcting misinformation about biblical interpretations or scriptures and stuff like that. So, and I was fascinated right away, just instantly fascinated, because I don't know if you know this, Dan. You really don't know me much at all, other than the fact that we've had a few words of contact via Twitter and whatnot. And I don't know if you've ever seen anything I've done, and that's fine if you haven't, because, you know, that's just the way it is. But anyway, I was actually born to Catholic people who were far too young to be raising children.
Yeah.
And they put me up for adoption, and I was raised in a Jewish home.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I was raised on, you know, knowing about the Torah and stuff like that. Oh, shalom, Simone. Simone posting in Hebrew there on there. So, and as I told you earlier, I spent grade 11 and 12 in Israel. So, I knew my Hebrew was better then than it is now, because if you don't use it, you can kind of forget little things here and there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Now, doing what you do, you probably know quite a bit of Hebrew. So, and that's
well, Neil, I think really you're getting the cart before the horse. The people on your channel have no idea who Dr. Dan is.
I doubt that. I think Dan's pretty well known to a lot of folks, but Dan is a scholar of religion and biblical stuff like that. Let's just put it that way.
That's what's on my card, biblical stuff like that.
Biblical stuff. I know all the biblical stuff. But Dan, I'd like to start by asking you kind of what drove you to start studying about religions in general and scriptures.
Well, I I grew up kind of in a non-religious household. It was a very religious household when I was initially born, but things happened. It was actually a kind of fundamentalist Baptist tradition.
Okay.
And then before I was old enough to really know what was going on, we moved and didn't talk about religion after that.
Really?
And yeah. And so I was raised with kind of just it's there. I was not supposed to listen to like music other than bluegrass and some old country and stuff like that. I wasn't supposed to have
bluegrass though.
Oh yeah, I still love bluegrass. I know every single word by heart of Legend of the Rebel Soldier.
How many acoustic guitars do you have in your house right now?
Oh gosh, right now I just have the one. I've got an electric upstairs that my 15-year-old daughter has appropriated. But I've had a series of Martins over the years.
There it is. I was like, you can't listen to bluegrass without getting some open picking, some Travis picking, some alternate picking. Finger style is the name of the game. You got to have a good acoustic for stuff like that.
You just went up like another notch in my book too, Dan, being all musician-wise too, because that's what I do too as well. But all the music you heard at the beginning is me. So.
Oh, I was going to ask who did that because everybody's got a cool story about where they got their intro music from. Well, that's very cool. I didn't know that was you. I'm actually a terrible musician though. My dad, my dad and my mom they had a bluegrass band when I was born. And they kind of set that aside when they had 5 kids in 6 years. And I was the first of them. And they kind of set that aside once all the kids were born. And then after everybody moved away, they picked it back up. So my dad goes to like bluegrass competitions. And I think even won a banjo competition a few years ago down in Arizona. And then my brother.
That's awesome.
My brother plays has played in a variety of different bands, and now does open mic nights at the bar across the street from his house, and in Colorado all the time. So yeah, we're a very musical family. I am the worst of everyone in the family, but I still love to pull out the guitar and yeah, just screw around for a while.
That's what I do as well. I'm terrible. I can play like a couple of 12-bar blues songs. That's about it.
Yeah, there's I really am in awe of people like Rick Beato and others like that who can just, they can listen to a song and be like, oh, here's the progression, here's what everything's doing. He's amazing. I'm in awe of that kind of stuff. I wish I could do that.
There's a couple of piano dudes who do the same thing Rick does.
Oh, really?
Oh man, I've seen the guy break down like video game music or like those really cool, funky, jazzy tracks that were in like 1972 Sesame Street. He's like, no. Dig these chord progressions. This is way over these kids' heads. Like, you're never gonna. I was like, oh man, the internet's good for something.
Yeah, I think I started picking it up when I was I went away to college at the University of Northern Colorado, and was very quickly kicked out. And so I did pretty well for myself educationally once I figured things out. But every college app I've submitted since UNC, I had to submit a transcript with a 0.29 GPA on it. But anyway, I was way into the scene there. I was smoking too much pot, drinking too much SoCo, getting into too many fights, doing all that stuff.
Too much pot you speak of.
The word much. I just don't know what the word much is.
This was enough to keep me away from class.
Right.
But this was the late 90s. So I got big into Dave Matthews Band. And that's what made me like want to pick up an acoustic guitar and figure out all these songs. And then I realized he's just a weirdo with incredibly flexible hands who just makes crap up. So I was
gifted.
like, I can't.
Don't try to learn guitar from Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah, that was my main mistake.
All weird tunings. His hands are like tennis rackets. It's just don't listen to it. Don't try to play along.
I'm pretty sure he's like Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. He can stretch those fingers in places like I don't even know.
Plastic Man.
Well, when I first bought the sheet music to Satellite with the tablature, I was like, my hand can't do that, and that was just like his kind of warm up thing that he used for a while.
And now it looks like this forevermore. I don't know what happened, dude.
But anyway, so we've gotten way off track. But
it happens.
But I wasn't raised to be religious. Like I said, I went out to school, got way into the scene. In South Park, Chef at one point says there's a time and a place for everything. It's called college. And I just leaned into that really heavily. And then I got into a lot of trouble, did a bunch of stupid stuff. Spent some time in the hospital from an overdose. Wrecked my life. And afterwards just was like, I don't want to wait tables 6 days a week for the rest of my life. And, this is kind of a meaningless existence. It was very depressing for me to be doing that. And, just to make enough money to pay my rent and, still have to count on free food from the restaurant to keep myself alive.
Treading above water there, right?
Capitalism, am I right?
Yeah. And, but I guess you could say I was exploring a bunch of different religions and found religion, so to speak. And I don't really talk about my personal faith publicly just because I try to keep tight boundaries around my scholarship online. But
understood.
I ended up joining the LDS Church. A year later, I was scheduled to go down to South America to spend 2 years as a proselytizing missionary in Uruguay. And in that year, I was like, I'm way behind everybody, all the other 20-year-olds that are going to be out there with me. I need to catch up. So I read the whole Bible. When I was down in South America, someone gave me a Spanish translation of the Bible, a Catholic edition that had the Apocrypha in it. They gave me a Bible dictionary. And I read like Second Maccabees. I read pretty much all the Apocrypha, but I was just fascinated by the culture, the language, the history, and just wanted to know everything I could. And I found in the Bible dictionary, there was a little chart that showed the ancient Hebrew alphabet, and then the Greek alphabet, and the Roman, and the modern Latin alphabet. And I realized, this is like a key. If I have a Hebrew text, I could transliterate. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I was like, I could render it in Latin characters and at least approximate how it's pronounced. And so I started trying to teach myself biblical Hebrew that way, and I was awful at it.
Do you speak any other languages? Are you like a language guy?
I pretend to be. I'm fluent in, fluent-ish. There was a time when I was fluent in Spanish. Now I stumble over myself quite a bit. And
that's like me with Hebrew.
I lost it, man. It's gone.
Yeah, you got to use it. And so I started studying biblical Hebrew. I started studying biblical Greek. I would go on to get 4 degrees in biblical studies. And so I have taken a lot of classes in biblical Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic and Ugaritic and Syriac and all these, and did better in some than in others. And so I'm competent in the languages, but you don't really speak biblical Hebrew. It's something that you read. I've done a little bit of modern Hebrew, done a little bit of modern Greek, but I wouldn't be able to do much more than survive if somebody dropped me off on the street and in Tel Aviv or in Athens. And so, but I just fell in love with everything that was available to learn about the history and the languages and the literature and the culture. And I decided, man, I would love to just study this for a living. And so I came back home. The only school that I had any chance whatsoever of getting into with a 0.29 GPA was, I figured, convert, return missionary, maybe Brigham Young will be nice to me. And they weren't. They laughed at me the first time around. But then I went to a community college for a semester, got a bunch of classes. I was able to finagle my way into Brigham Young University that had a major called Ancient Near Eastern Studies. So I could go there and study biblical Hebrew, and I minored in classical Greek. And then I went away to Oxford after that and did a master's degree in Jewish studies. Wrote my thesis on, my thesis title was Anti-Anthropomorphism and the Forlaga of LXX Exodus, which is a mouthful. Yeah, but, I did another master's degree. Yeah. I did another master's degree at Trinity Western University, just outside of Vancouver, BC. And,
I know it well.
In biblical studies. And then I had been accepted to go back to Oxford for the PhD, but they didn't offer me any funding. And they basically use Americans to pay for their local students to not have to pay tuition. And
wow.
And I didn't have.
Expensive, man.
It is very expensive, yeah. So I was like, oh well, I can't do that. What am I going to do? And so for a couple of years, I didn't have any prospects about finishing. My goal was always to do a PhD and to study and research and teach for a living, which is an increasingly difficult thing to achieve these days. Even when I got into my undergrad, people were like, there are very few jobs and there are fewer every year. Don't get into this field unless you cannot possibly imagine yourself doing anything else. And more than half of the people who are in my undergraduate cohort are now doing other things. Besides, they're not in the academy anymore. So it is a shrinking field. And I thought, well, that's the end of that. But luckily, I had a job fall into my lap, a full-time job that allowed me to build this house that kept me gainfully employed, gave me health insurance for the first time in my adult life.
Always good.
And yeah.
So Neil, health insurance is when the government doesn't take care of your health care. You have to pay for it yourself through companies who just rip you off. That's health insurance as opposed to health care, which is what you get.
I'm aware, my friend. I'm aware.
Well, you live in a civilized country that has, indoor plumbing, health care.
Indoor plumbing.
All of our plumbing is in
right up here,
all of our plumbing just goes out into DC and just, spreads. So
yeah, go ahead.
And so after a couple of years of working this job, I was a scripture translation supervisor for the LDS Church. So I was working at their headquarters. Phenomenal job. I loved 80% of every minute that I was there. But I was talking with a friend of mine, a scholar named Francesca Stavrakopoulos, a wonderful scholar out in the UK. And she was like, "Oh, I'm the head of the," she was asking what I was doing for school. And I said, "Well, that dream's kind of dead. I don't really have any options." And she was like, "Well, come do a PhD with me. I'm the head of the department in the UK. In the UK, we have remote programs. You just got to find a way to pay for tuition." And I was able to finagle a way to pay for tuition. And so almost 3 years after I finished my second master's degree, I started up my PhD through Exeter University. And that took 4.5 years for me to complete. And so was able to finish my PhD. And yeah, I've just fallen in love with understanding who these people were that were responsible for creating this text, for putting it together, for circulating it, the people who have received it and interpreted it. What were they trying to get out of it? How did they understand it? Just all the narratives, all the histories, the language, the literature, all of that just fascinates me to no end. And the fact that it's so socially significant, the Bible, just makes it more fun for me. And because I came into religion late in life, I wasn't like raised with all these kind of binary, simplistic ideas about what the Bible is supposed to be and isn't supposed to be. So ever since I came in, I treated this as something to learn about. There was stuff in there that I didn't know that I could learn. And that has annoyed people I've interacted with in my religious life for a long time. But there have been plenty of other people who are like me and just want to know more and don't really care if knowing more doesn't fit with the worldview that we're supposed to have adopted. So right. I've always just wanted to know, what are the data? What's most likely were they trying to do here? How did they live their lives? Why did they put this together? How did it get circulated? And I'm just fascinated by that. And the fact that it routinely infuriates people whose opinions I could not care less about. It just makes it more fun.
I hear that. Have you ever taken what you've learned and the formula that you use on TikTok, how you kind of dispel misinformation and stuff, that all right, let's see it, and then and then people go into what they got, and then you say, okay, well, actually, that's a bunch of nonsense. This is actually what Have you ever done that within a church setting for people in the congregation? You ever has anyone come up to you during some sort of church session, maybe, and you had to correct people?
Sometimes, yeah. There are times when somebody will be speaking and I kind of wear my heart close to my close to the surface. Let's just say I don't remember what the saying is, but if someone were to just watch me through a church service, they would occasionally catch me making faces like, or stuff like that. And so people will come up to me afterwards and be like, "Hey, I saw you make that face when they said this. What's going on there?" There have been times when people have said something and then they see me making a face, or they'll be like, "I don't know, Dan, maybe you know more about this than me. Maybe you can correct me here." And so sometimes that happens. And usually, though, I try not to be, unless I'm assigned to teach, and I have taught Sunday school many, many times within the congregations I've been a part of, and I present stuff in a straightforward way. But I try not to be destructive of faith. But I'll say, here are the data, and make of them what you will. But these are the data, and usually people appreciate that. The people who know to look at me and ask me about why I made a weird face are usually the people who appreciate hearing that kind of thing. But,
good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I try not to tear anybody down just for the sake of tearing them down in situations like that.
Well, there are some situations where that might be necessary, but I get what you mean.
Yeah, well, if I'm in other circumstances where, somebody is saying something harmful or something like that, I will happily speak up. And I've done that too. I've made a lot of people uncomfortable in Sunday school classes, particularly if people are leaning into Christian nationalist talking points and rhetoric and stuff like that. That's when I'll put on my jerk hat and make people feel uncomfortable.
So Dan, you're not 18, 21 years old. You've been around the block. The Christian
I wish I was 21 years old still.
No, you do not. No, you do not. A gallon of gas is $400. You do not want to be 21. Rent is $1 million a month. So have you noticed, like, probably in like the last decade or so, like a pointed rise in Christian nationalism and people kind of taking their religious beliefs and saying, aha, the Constitution said, like, it's all the same now. Have you noticed a large section of that?
It seems to have become more acute since Obama was elected, and particularly his second term. And from my perspective, although having looked at the history, that it doesn't originate there. Right. I think we can go back to the 70s to find one of the periods where we really had a push to get Christian nationalism kind of in a position of power within the government. They didn't call it that at the time. This was, your silent majority. You had folks like Wyrick and Falwell and those guys going around trying to galvanize a religious right. And that was primarily because they were trying to push back against desegregation, and particularly in evangelical colleges and universities like Bob Jones.
It's just the natural way. We're just naturally meant to be separate but equal.
Yeah. And then so I recently started reading this new book that came out recently called The Religion of Whiteness. How racism distorts Christian faith, which makes the argument that a large chunk of white Christian America is committed to, they argue for a religion of whiteness. I would say at very least an ideology of whiteness, that this is one of the things this is your Lebowskian rug that ties together an awful lot of Christian America is basically the exaltation of whiteness, that it is natural, that it is the default, that it is the best, that everybody,
it's normal.
And it's a fascinating book, but that's the roots of the religious right that arose in the 70s that put Reagan in the White House, and that's absolutely.
The Satanic Panic is one of the first babies that we saw of that, when they're like, D&D is literal spells casting literal. If we thought that don't tell kids that, because now we definitely want to play, and I need a 20-sided die immediately. My math teacher needs a forget me spell because I did not study, and I have to just freeze time for half an hour so I can study. Like, we wish magic was real.
I love that Stranger Things has introduced a whole new generation, not just to D&D, but to the Satanic Panic. I don't think a lot of people realize how real that was.
I lived through it, man.
They were scared.
Yeah. And there's not a huge difference between that and, all the CRT crap and particularly in my state in Utah, the war against critical race theory is so stupid. So none of the legislators who are responsible for actually legislating about this and have made resolutions and laws about this, not a single one of them can even describe what it means. They won't even try. But
it's woke is what it is.
Oh, geez.
And it's just
whatever I think that means.
Yeah, and Chris Rufo was like explicit about this. We're rebranding CRT. We're going to take all of the things that the right hates. We're going to cram it all in a bag and write CRT on the outside of that bag. And then every time they see any of those things, they're going to associate with a CRT, and they're just going to sink the ship of CRT. And like, he was open about that. That is what this campaign is all about, and everybody just lapped it up. But yeah, since 2013, things have gotten really bad again, and I think Christian nationalism, hand in hand with white supremacy, is just lashing out against the progress that minoritized, oppressed groups in the United States have been trying to achieve and have been achieving in baby steps. And I think it is. I hope that it is the death throes.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I call it the death throes.
Yeah. I hope it's just they're just getting upset because they know they're circling the drain. But
when that last turd just smears the side of the bowl on its way down, that's what you're.
Dan's trying to eat here, Mikey. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. My bad. Oh, real quick.
No worries. There was an awful movie.
You got a super chat. Real quick. Super chat from Steve Acosta, $20. Thanks, Steve. This is a great live stream. Are the brains of atheists different to those of religious people? Do atheists think differently from religious people? Different temporal lobes. Thanks, Steve.
Well, I could actually throw something at that a little bit.
I was about to say
there was I don't remember when it happened, but it was quite some years back, where a person had to have an operation where they had to sever the corpus callosum of the brain, which connects the right and left side. And this person ultimately ended up developing two distinct personalities. One was more rational, atheistic type, and the other one was a very hardcore believer. And there were two personalities in the same body. So do I think that atheist brain and religious people's brains are different? I don't think our brains are different, but it depends on how the wiring starts at an early age. So, and some people, even though they're hardwired into fundamentalism or evangelicalism or whatever, some still do end up with the more rational side taking over, and they end up becoming not religious. I can tell you, I've heard well over 500 stories of that myself. So.
There's
what do you guys think?
One of my specializations is the cognitive science of religion, which looks at the cognitive underpinnings of all of the different features of the human experience that we group under this rubric of religion. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize is quite common in religious studies. The fact that religion doesn't exist outside of our discourse about it. Religion is a category that we've made up. And there are a lot of things that we've crammed into this category, but those things extend well beyond the category as well. But there is a degree to which what we call analytical. Excuse me, sorry.
You're good.
One of the side effects of cramming spaghetti down my throat, along with a healthy dose of Dr. Pepper. Get in touch, Dr. Pepper. I would be happy to get a
there you go, Dr. Pepper.
Going. Even if it's just free Dr. Pepper for the rest of my life. But
can I get in on that?
I was about to say, I will come over and just drive it back. I don't know. The mileage isn't the problem.
I used to live in Plano, or right on the outskirts of Plano.
Oh,
Texas,
hell no. I'm not driving through Texas. That's the biggest state on the planet. Never mind.
But that's where they had a Dr. Pepper plant somewhere around there. I've driven by a few times. But analytical thinking correlates very strongly with a more atheistic worldview. A greater capacity for empathy tends to correlate with a more enchanted world, a world in which there are unseen agents around you. Because what empathy is basically simulating another mind and being able to experience what that mind is experiencing. That's why, when we see somebody in pain or something like that, sometimes it can cause us pain. That's why we feel bad when we watch sad movies, all that kind of stuff. But that capacity to simulate another mind also creates other minds in the world around us that we detect. Scary movies, if you've ever come up out of the basement with all the lights off and been a little quicker to get up and shut the door behind you because you sense presence or something like that.
You mean those are at my heels that I can feel? Those sensations are byproducts of human cognition.
And one of the things that those byproducts can turn into is concepts of spirits and ghosts and the kinds of unseen agents. And so the more someone's mind is wired to generate those unseen agents in the world around them, the more likely they are to adopt religious worldviews. And so, there is, there are different ways that different dimensions of wiring in the mind that can combine to create an individual who's more likely to be religious or less likely to be religious. But it is, but there's also, because religion is not just belief in deity, there's a social dimension to it. And one of the reasons that religion has persevered for as long as it has is because it is a wonderful vehicle for a lot of pro-social, what we call pro-social behaviors. And pro-social means behaviors that increase social cohesion, that allow a group to grow in size without breaking down socially. To maintain that cohesion. And so sometimes people are religious because of the social dimensions. Other times they're, people are like, oh, I'm spiritual. And sometimes people are like, oh, I'm spiritual, not religious. And that is folks who lean more into the kind of unseen agent part of the world, but aren't so committed to the
specific deity. Yeah.
You talk about potheads. We all know potheads.
So why do you think some people, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about. Why do you think some people are more easily convinced about being religious than others are, let's say?
I think I was going to give Dan a second to chew his food. Let me throw in a joke here. Answer, Neil. The answer is obvious: robots.
Okay.
That's why.
There are actually people who research the concept of religion in the virtual world and in robotics and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot going on there, but I think in addition to the whole the theory of mind aspect of it, there are people who something's out there. They can just sense that something's out there, and different expressions of religious belief maybe scratch that itch better than others. Sometimes it's a social aspect of it. In fact, I think a lot of times it has to do with the worldviews with which we're raised and access to power and resources. There are a lot of ways that religious communities offer people social capital, allow them to increase their standing within the social identities that are important to them. And so I when it comes to what we call organized religion, I don't think anyone is ever really entirely free from those pro-social forces. I think those are always there to one degree or another. And I think the other kind of individual cognitive side of unseen agency and the divine and things like that can play a role as well. It's a little hydraulic. There can be more of one and less of the other as they go back.
It's very ensconced in our culture here.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's a phenomenological aspect to it as well. Ritual frequently plays a role in those pro-social forces. And so like Durkheim's notion of collective effervescence, like if, it's a lot more fun to go to a concert and just sing along to, Taylor Swift and All Too Well, when you're surrounded by tens of thousands of other people who are singing the same words, the same way along with you. Then
same part of the brain gets stimulated too, right? So,
yeah. And so that kind of phenomenological aspect of it plays a role as well.
For sure.
And so, I think there are a bunch of different dimensions that interact in people's minds and in their experience of the world in a variety of different ways that result in behaviors that we label religious. But you can go to parts of the world that are less influenced by a European worldview, and a lot of those behaviors are very distinct, but still kind of fall under a similar umbrella.
Sure. Well, of course, the cultures around the globe are going to be different too, right? Because we're, so the evolution of religion in different parts of the world, different cultures, is going to be a little bit different as well. So this is why, in my opinion, is why there are so many different branches of Christianity or Judaism or any of the other ones as well, because they evolve differently around the globe. I'm going to ask a couple of questions from the audience panel that I have here. How does Dan...
Okay. No, the only reason there's separate kinds of Christianity is so that they can have like those like softball tournaments. So you got to have like Lutherans versus Anabaptists versus, I mean, everybody can't be on the same team. You only get so many slots. That's why there's over 1,000 different Christianities, because it's a stacked tournament, Neil. You got to get your spot together.
I guess it makes for some excitement, I suppose.
When a first baseman and a second baseman come together in the name of Jesus
and create a third baseman? Wait, where are you going with this?
You get the sacrifice bunch squeeze, and you can just get them. You get them every time.
All right.
Oh, by the way, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the fit thing. I forgot.
Yeah, but the fit today is Amazing Spider-Man. So
is that
the microphone always gets in the way.
Is that the first? That's like the image of the first cover that what's his name, who did Spawn? Is that not his first?
Oh, no. I've Todd McClellan. There's another one that I have. It's a black one. That's the
I've seen that one.
McClellan, where he's kind of in all the webbing, and there are a bunch of little spiders all around.
Right.
That's
mine is.
I remember
mine's
that.
anime based. There, kids got a bunch of anime guys.
Oh, you got All Might and Luffy and
Saitama and Naruto and Goku. And I'm actually just been watching some Dragon Ball Z recently. So anyway, so Moontrack asked, how does Dan rationalize his Bible knowledge with facts? I'm not sure how to take that question. I mean, I'm obviously this person probably is not a big believer in the Bible, and that's all fine and dandy. But like how to... Obviously, like I know from watching your stuff, Dan, that you do consider some of it to be mythology type stuff, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So maybe give him the best answer you can, I guess. Yeah.
Well, if the question is how I reconcile what I study in the Bible with my faith, that's something that I don't talk about publicly. But when it comes to facts with what's in the Bible, a lot of times you just don't. A lot of this is propaganda. A lot of it is mythology. A lot of it is they're just taking traditions that have been passed down for generations, and they're creating narratives out of it, or some of it is liturgical. These are things that were, chanted in the temple, or there are theories about some of these things being, hymns that you sang to gain entrance into the temple or something like that. There's a bunch of different stuff going on.
We got to sing to get in.
It's a theory.
I'm not singing the tune to open the door, man. Open the door, Larry. Jesus Christ, I'm already late, Larry, and you got me singing out here.
Well, that's one theory. That's one theory of what what some of the Psalms may have been for. Another is that they're kind of like callback things, kind of like you might see in certain church services.
Knock the door.
Right. You'd be a terrible cantor.
Wait, please unlock the door. There we go. Let him in.
So Blake Nix first made a statement. I've gotten interested in the people who wrote the Bible through the enthusiasm of people like Dan. Yeah, I hear that, Blake. I hear that. That's one of the things that drew me to Dan as well. And then asked, what were the people who were in the Bible like? People like Dan have shared the enthusiasm for that question with people like me, and I've really gotten hooked. So I guess it's like,
very cool.
What were the people in the Bible like compared to what we know of today, I guess, is something.
I think that's such a fascinating question. That's something that we always want to know more about. And it's very difficult to answer that question, because for the most part, we have to approach these literary creations as literary creations. But I think a lot of them were very much like people today. A lot of the stuff that's very political, having to do with kings and high priests and things like that. these are people who have been scratching and clawing their way to the top of the heap to gain power for a long time. Probably very driven people, probably very focused people. You have folks who are probably not so much like the prophets. I think these would have been fascinating people. You know, we tend to think of Isaiah as kind of this solemn character, but a lot of scholars would say prophecy in the 8th century was ecstatic prophecy. These were people who, you know, stripped down naked and writhed around on the ground and shared messages. And even in the book of Isaiah, it talks about Isaiah going naked for a couple of years.
I've seen that guy on the subway.
Yeah,
he totally thinks he can predict the future. He is wrong. He doesn't even get the fucking train time right most of the time.
Well,
I just roll around naked anyways.
It's spring. Neil is wanting to do that. Like, feels good.
And this is what happens in when Saul is going to become king. When Samuel says, you know, the Spirit of the Lord is going to Salah, force entry into you and give you a different heart and make you a different person. And then it later says the Spirit of the Lord force entry into him, and he prophesied. And this word probably means went into an ecstatic trance. And so and then it says some people came back and were like, is Saul among the prophets as well? And they probably saw him, you know, in various states of undress, writhing around on the ground, and was like, look at this doofus.
No pun intended.
But it was.
Don't look at him. He rolled in cactus earlier. It is not pretty down there.
But that was probably a more respected social performance anciently. These days, we see that kind of thing, and it's like, don't make eye contact. Just ignore him. But, you know, those were the people who wrote the book of Isaiah. So I think you have those kinds of folks as well in the Bible. The book of Jonah is a parody of the prophetic genre. Takes the prophetic genre and kind of turns it on its head. You know, God calls a prophet, and the prophet goes up to the temple and sees God, and you know, I'll do whatever you say. Jonah gets the call and hightails it in the other direction. He goes, you know, you go up to the temple, you go up to Jerusalem. Jonah goes down to Joppa, goes down into his ship, goes down into the belly of the ship, doing everything the opposite of what a prophet is supposed to do. And, you know, at the end, God's like, you wanted me to destroy this city, but look at all the cattle. I can't destroy all this beef. And so it's
I kind of agree.
I love cows.
It's parody. There's also I think a powerful message about forgiveness going on there that goes over most people's heads, but it's also parodying the prophetic genre as satire. So you do have, you know, sarcasm and some comedy in there as well. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall when they were writing this story. I think you know, you probably had some goofy people in there as well. But yeah, these are all kind of personas that we have to just imagine. It's the best we can do, and sometimes we have parallels to today that can help make it a little more real. But when you do that, when you do try to recreate the people who came up with this, I think it makes it a more instructive kind of practice. It helps bring these things alive a little bit more when you can imagine who is behind writing this. Helps you think about what they're trying to accomplish, which I would argue is a better path to try and understand what the texts are supposed to be saying.
Right, for sure. We have another super chat here, $5 from Natra Vic Fire. Natrad Vic Fire. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Don't be offended if I didn't. Any thoughts on the book Babel or Babel by R.F. Kuang, both the linguistics and the social political commentary?
Well, I'll go first. What the hell is this book? It's probably about R.F. Kuang. RF, it's probably about radar. Some sort of radiometrics, and I don't have a degree in that, so I'll leave it for everyone else.
So I pulled it up here. Babel or the Necessity of Violence, an Arcane History of the Oxford Translator's Revolution. I'm afraid I'm not familiar enough with this book to be able to comment on it. Author's note on her representations of historical England and of the University of Oxford in particular. So it looks like a novel. Babel is a work of speculative fiction, and so takes place in a fantastical version of Oxford in the 1830s, whose history was thoroughly altered by silver work.
Johnny Tremaine, you son of a gun.
Yeah, I don't know if they got injured. That was Johnny Tremaine was one of my favorite books growing up.
How's that
Tremaine
for a literary pull?
Yeah, that was a deep cut. That and my side of the mountain were my two favorite
I got
books
Band-Aids.
growing up.
I was a Captain's Courageous Call of the Wild guy.
Oh yeah,
I read way too much Jack London as an impressionable youth. I'm like, I'm tough as nails.
Yeah,
and I was like, I am an emotional wreck. I have trauma.
that was
people about my problems.
That was a kind of masculinity that I think a lot of people leaned into and are now hopefully in therapy.
Hopefully, join me, guys. Join me.
But yeah, I didn't. I don't know enough about this book to be able to say. But
That's a new one on me.
Yeah, I spent. I did a master's degree at Oxford. I love Oxford. I did what I could to learn about its history while I was there, and since I've been there. But that sounds like a very fascinating story. I'll have to look more into that. Thank you for the question. Here. Sorry I couldn't provide anything more intelligent than that.
One more, I haven't looked at the comments now, and there's been 104 since the last time I looked. Sorry, folks. It's not that I'm trying to ignore anything, but I am just running through the ones that I starred already.
I got it.
All right. So Moontrack.
Hi, Moontrack.
This is kind of an interesting question, I think. Why do any writings from the Middle East have any more weight than all the missing writings? I don't know what they're meaning by missing writings, but from the entire planet. Are we missing writings from around the globe? I suspect probably a few.
Yeah, there have been, a lot of people joke about the loss of the library at Alexandria. There's certainly a lot of stuff that would have been there that is gone. There's certainly a lot of literature from places around China and elsewhere. There's gone. Africa certainly had a lot of traditions that are gone. I don't know that when you get further north, there was writing. And a lot of that's gone. We've recovered some of it in Egypt and Sumeria and all that kind of stuff. But here's a one example of how that happens. Why do you refer to it as the Middle East? Because you're adopting a specific perspective. Yeah, because you're speaking from a certain positionality, and you've adopted a certain perspective, and that influences how you think and talk about these things. And the literature that was generated in what I refer to as ancient Southwest Asia is the literature that fed into the development of industrialized, modernized, literate, democratic-ish Europe. And so Europe then went and, colonized a bunch of parts of the world, played the role of empire, and changed so much of the world. And so their perspective has kind of become the default in so many different parts of the world. And so that's why in virtually any part of the world, you can say Middle East. And even if you're east of the Middle East, you still know, oh, that's the place that's out west, because that perspective has spread all over the place. And so, but yeah, that there's absolutely significant loss all around the world. Literary traditionally, that things we can never recover. But you can still go out and find literature that you've probably never read before from different parts of the world, and more and more of it is being translated into English. If you're an English speaker.
And I just want to throw in, I don't have a degree, but I just want to remind everybody, there was this little thing that happened called the Crusades. So if you had, like certain kinds of books, you were definitely not getting caught with those kinds of books. So a lot of those books were destroyed on purpose because the writer of those books wanted to, or the owner of that book wanted to live. So a lot of it was destroyed and people just tried to remember it, and we're still trying to put it all together because, you know, you're gonna burn in hell if you read this book. And if you read the book, then I'll help you burn. I don't know. It's in the books.
Where are you even going with it? We had another super chat here from Steve Acosta. I think, and see, now it's got the link in it. So this one's coming from your channel, Dan. So I'm pretty sure this is one of your super chats for $10. Steve Acosta wanted to know.
I think it still goes to you. I'm not sure. But I think since you're hosting, but
well, thank you, Steve. If not,
all right, Steve, my guy.
Neil, Mikey, and Dan. What are your very favorite or what is your very favorite movie? I'm guessing Dan's favorite movie is The Big Lebowski.
it's on the list.
Up there.
Yeah, it depends on at least to break in and answer first, but at least it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But around Christmas time, I gotta watch Christmas Vacation. I mean, that's on the list of movies that when there's snow on the ground, I want to see
Die Hard.
Snots. I want to see Die Hard's another one. But I grew up. My family and I still communicate most effectively through movie quotes. So movies that we saw mainly in the 80s. So like Young Frankenstein, Caddyshack, Three Amigos, Spaceballs. Right. Yeah. Kenny Loggins never hurt anybody.
I have a Spaceballs t-shirt. It literally says Spaceballs.
Spaceballs the t-shirt. Yeah. Those are the movies that I could watch.
Shark Jumpers
and over.
And Big Lebowski, I think is in there as
that's good. Some
of the most quotable. But yeah, I think those movies from the 80s are the ones that I cut my teeth on.
Neil,
I do a lot of the Monty Python Holy Grail quotes.
Yeah,
you know. So.
That and Life of Brian are frequently quoted in my family.
Yeah. They're so funny. That's fantastic.
Neil,
but there are some more super chats here. Chaz for $5.
Sir, he paid $10 to get all three of us. Only Dan has gone. You have skipped me and yourself. So
apologies.
Neil, please,
like I say,
what is your most favorite movie? You get
my most favorite movie. All right,
Uno movie.
Not entirely sure what my favorite movie might be. This is one of them, especially for the Christmas time. Ones. And I I've always, as you can see, I've got piles of Star Wars Lego boxes over there. So Star Wars was another one for me, and the original one, like the original Star Wars in trilogy.
77. Yeah,
you betcha. I was in line for that sucker, and I think I was 11 years old at the time. But
me too.
Yeah,
that's right age for Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. Can you imagine being like fucking 11 and then fucking lightsaber come out? Oh god.
There's I don't know if you do like Disneyland and that kind of stuff, but
I've been to Disneyland as recently as 2010.
They go that's a bit ago, but they do up all the Nightmare Before Christmas stuff pretty good. If you go at the right time of year. And they even do the
Halloween.
Yeah, they do the Oogie Boogie Bash. It's a big costume party that they do on the California Adventure side, and so it's pretty cool if you're into that kind of thing.
My dog's name is
That's
Zero.
Really cool. I had one more I wanted to mention as well, and that was, like you mentioned earlier, Spaceballs is another one of my favorites because I was very big into the sci-fi, right? So
yeah.
Godzilla movies were my thing too. When I was a little kid, I was watching all the Godzilla movies and Gamera. I mean, who doesn't like a flying fucking space turtle, for crying out loud? Anyway.
Gamora's a turtle?
Gamera, not Gamora.
Turtle.
when I was in high school, like if like Kickboxer came on TV or something, I was like, well, the rest of my night is locked down.
Don't call me.
I tried to watch one of those the other day, and I was like, doesn't hold up.
It's like, this is bad.
Bloodsport was a good one for me.
Yeah.
Was that the one where he dipped his hands in the glass?
I think so. And I just watched.
He's got to go to the Kumite, and because his brother had his back broken, and or a friend.
That's right.
I forgot.
I forgot that guy's name. That really big Jack dude. He was in like
Bolo.
80 movie.
Bolo Young.
Yeah. I was terrified of him. I was like, oh.
He was also in the other movie I was just going to mention because we watched it the other day, Enter the Dragon.
It's good.
Oh, he was in that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I didn't know that. Oh, very cool.
Mikey,
what about yours? Yeah.
My favorite movie is a little movie no one's ever heard of called Pan's Labyrinth. It's by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. It's a good one.
It's equal parts dark and bright and sad and wonderful all at the same time.
And Mitch McConnell is in it. So
old Mitchy. Old Mitch got caught with the lag switch.
Based on the memes I've been seeing, it sounds.
Did they make him the frog?
Uh-oh. This is an interesting one here too. We'll deal with this one here real quick. Hang on. Hold on. We got starred one still.
Yeah, we got 2 stars.
Okay.
Here we go.
At McClellan, at you, Dan. What is the oldest manuscript about Noah's flood? About Noah's flood is only from the 5th century. Why is the oldest manuscript about Noah's flood only from the 5th century? I'm not sure I even understand that.
Well, the question is suggesting that the oldest manuscript that we have of that part of Genesis dates to the 5th century CE. I'm pretty sure that's not true. In fact,
thanks for the super chat too, by the way.
Answer,
Mr. Veryfrost.
It's certainly not true when it comes to like Septuagint manuscripts. Now, those are translations into Greek, but I'm pretty sure we've got some of that represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which would date to well before that. But I would have to verify. But the most authoritative manuscript for the Hebrew Bible is considered the Masoretic text, which is medieval in origin. Like around 900 to 1000 CE is when the manuscripts that are most complete date to. But we have a bunch of more fragmentary representations of these texts that go all the way back to around the earliest Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts are 200, maybe 250 BCE. So they go back pretty far. Now in the Dead Sea Scrolls, let me see if we have. I don't think we have any. Okay, we have a 4Q Paleogenesis has 8 verses of Genesis 6. A handful of letters of 8 verses of Genesis 6. So we don't have at Qumran representation of the whole Moses Noah story, but we do have some fragments. So there's the story was definitely part of the Torah, part of Genesis, going back to 4th, 5th century BCE.
Chaz, apologies, I didn't see your super chat.
No, we're skipping Chaz. Chaz is skipped. No, I'm just kidding, Chaz. Thanks for the $5, sucker.
Dan, will you make a video addressing Peterism and comment on it now?
Preterism, yeah. I've made a handful of videos about that. In the past, there have been a handful of folks who try to promote some kind of preterism, and that's this notion that a lot of this end time stuff, particularly as found in the Book of Revelation, was fulfilled by 70 CE, and this is a way to have the prophecy that all of these things would come to pass within the generation that was standing there with Jesus. It's a way to make that prophecy accurate by saying, oh, well, we just have to interpret the the Roman siege of Judea and of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple in 70 CE be the fulfillment of all of these end times prophecies. I think it's a way to try to historicize things. I don't think it accounts for everything that is written in the text. The text didn't even exist before 70 CE. All of the Gospels were written from 70 CE and after. And so I think it's just one way to try to negotiate these prophecies into the history as we know it. But yeah, it's a theological approach, and so sometimes because I'll talk about, oh, this happened earlier or this didn't happen or something like that, people will be like, oh, you're a preterist. No, not a preterist.
Damn preterists.
It's just one approach.
Apex preterist.
How come I didn't think of that? Jeez.
That's a good one.
That's why I'm paid the big bucks, baby.
Wait, am I supposed to be paying you?
Wait, I was supposed to be asking for money.
Now we split everything on the channel, so it's all good. Listen, we've gone to the hour, Dan. So it goes by so quick, especially when you're having a good time. And I got to tell you, it's been awesome getting to chat with you about this sort of stuff, my friend.
I've enjoyed it as well. It's always nice to not have to stick too closely to a formal script.
Yeah, no, we want these to be a little bit more open, a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaged with the audience as well. And Chaz, my apologies for skipping you. I didn't actually skip you. The other one came up first.
It comes up in weird order.
I know it's weird order.
Yeah, we got you.
Listen, one more quick question I want to throw at you. I don't usually write questions down, but there was a few that I had in my mind and I didn't want to forget them. So, and I'm like
Teacher's
biblical
pet.
age. I'm like 900 something years old. So, and my memory doesn't work quite as good as anymore. But why do you think scriptures are taught to people incorrectly and thereby contributing to the continued misunderstandings and misinterpretations?
I think it's because every generation has to, in order to maintain the authority of the text, they've got to negotiate with the text. They've got to figure out a way to read it in a way that makes it meaningful and useful to the generation. Right. Because if we stuck to precisely if we had a way to find out and then stick to what the original author wanted the text to do, the next generation, it's largely irrelevant. 2,000 years down the road, entirely irrelevant. It would have no relevance. And so in order to maintain the relevance, you have to negotiate with it. You have to figure out how to make it relevant. And that is usually going to mean moving further and further away from the circumstances, the rhetorical goals, the intended meaning that whatever the authors had and whatever the earliest audiences understood. And so I think that's why when people see me saying, oh, this is what the data indicate, and they just blow a gasket. They just can't accept that because it would represent such a threat to their worldview. And that's what is most important to them is maintaining and advancing the interests of that worldview. And so that's why so many people are convinced that my goal is to destroy religion and destroy the Bible. And yeah. And I tell them, I love the Bible. And, they're just like, does not compute. You're trying to destroy the Bible.
Jeez.
And
that never occurred to me watching your channel. What occurred to me was having a better understanding of what was meant by it and what was, the literal stuff meant by it, and how can we still actually put any of it to use today, which, there are lessons to be learned, obviously. There's a lot of not so good shit in them, but we can push that aside because we've evolved past all that and just take what we can for what's good and we can from it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's plenty in there that is still relevant today, even as it was intended by the original authors. And there's plenty in there that's garbage. And there's not a single person living today who thinks of the Bible as an inspired text that has not already rejected so much that was intended by the authors.
Right.
That does not think that's garbage. So as much as people get upset with me for saying, oh, that's garbage, that's worthless, that is immoral, everybody does it. It is literally impossible to maintain the authority, the inspiration of the Bible without rejecting parts of it as complete and utter garbage.
I don't know. I think we should really keep the like no mixed fabrics part. I think that's really.
We should I like crayfish. I like crab. I like seafood.
You know, the Levitican law can really make. Well, Congress is working on it. Let me shut up. I mean, don't watch a boiling pot and all that good stuff.
It's funny you said that, Mikey, because when I worked for a Greek fella at a pizza joint that I worked at, one day I was still. I could always consider myself more of a secular Jew than anything. So working for me, he goes, "Oh, Neil, what are you doing? You're a Jewish guy. You're eating bacon. Moses isn't going to let you into heaven." I'm like, what? Like, what? I'm like, I'll give him a piece, and he'll be like, "Oh my goodness, what have I been missing?"
Like, bro, have you had
come right in and bring more of that with you.
What was this guy's name? The Greek guy?
Anestos.
Oh, what a great
Anestos
Greek name.
Tsouglianis. So, yeah. One of my best bosses ever. I gotta tell you. Yeah.
If you ever see him again, go Yassas Anestos and see what he's.
I'm well aware of that one. Well, that one was flying around a lot. Yeah.
I think they're talking about you, Neil.
The hippie dude is my tribesman. The hippie dude. Wow, I'm getting called all kinds. I get called biker. My little kids, when I was at Disneyland, I was called the pirate guy from the ride, the Caribbean ride.
Oh, nice.
So now I'm biker pirate, and now I am. What am I now?
You're a hippie. You're a hippie.
Oh, hippie. So I'm a hippie biker pirate. There we go. I like it. It works for me.
That's not inaccurate. Like, you are kind of a hippie. You know how to ride a motorcycle.
I know Aaron wants me to go riding with him.
You could sail a ship if given the opportunity, I feel like.
I have sailed. So, yeah. Just so you know, Dan, I'm friends with Dr. Kip Davis.
Yeah. Kip and I were at Trinity at the same time.
Oh, were you together? Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
We weren't students together. He had gotten his PhD. He was doing a postdoc, I think, at Trinity Western.
Okay.
While I was there as a master's student. But we're good friends. Kip's a good dude.
He is. He's absolutely cool. And he's literally about an hour away from me. So we could go and hang out anytime. All right. I think we've covered. Nobody got time for 630.
Hey. Want to make it into heaven. 613, baby. And that's only this year. Wait till the 2025 list comes out.
If you go through the list of the videos on the channel, you will find one with Dr. Kip Davis as well. He's been on the show as well. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with Mikey and I today. It's been an absolute pleasure and a blast, man.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. I right as soon as after watching a few of your videos, I said, someday I got to get this guy. So, I need some of this knowledge pounded in. So this is been so much fun. And guys, we do an after party. There is a link to it in the description box below. If you just want to hang out and check it out. And our conversations end up going all over the place during these things, just FYI. We go for about an hour and a half, depending on how things are going for the after party. Dan is going to be there with us. If you'd like to be a part of the after party, we generally have room for 10 people. And there's some regulars that I will always give priority to. Just so you know, you can send myself or Mikey a request via Twitter, or you can hit my email address or Mikey's email address. Mine is 604atheist@gmail.com. It's linked below, and we can get a link to if you want to come and hang out for a little bit.
Say hi.
Thank you everyone in the chat for hanging out with us tonight. We broke a record tonight. I think it was up to almost 180 people at one point, which is for this channel is insane. So thanks to everyone for coming and hanging out, and thanks Dan for sharing the link on your channel as well. That's
real quick, Neil, on Dan's channel and over here, like the video. We got massive amounts of people in here, and then we're at like a quarter or like 25% of the fucking people like it. Just like it. So that way it pops up in the algorithm and gets in front of other people. Just help us do the easy stuff. It's free. Only do it once.
Am I single? Yes, I am, but it is by choice, Moonstruck. I'm sorry. Anyway, thanks everyone in the chats, YouTube, Twitch. No, we used to do Twitter. We don't do Twitter anymore. Thanks to all our amazing patrons and members. Without you guys, we really couldn't do the show. So thank you for all you do for the show. If you're interested in becoming either one of those, there are ways to do so. Also link below in the description. If you dug the music at the beginning and the outro of this show and the upcoming show, there are links to they're my band, and you can check out all the tunes there if you like. And soon we'll be having some newer intros because we've done a little restructuring of the show. So Mikey's music will be involved as well. And Mikey's musical links are also linked down below. So you can go check that out as well. Yeah, that's about it. And like I usually say at the end of the interview section of the show, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And until then, guys, hit that link below if you want to hang out with us. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
What's untangled?